Hello, class. I, as you know, am Professor Murphy. This is my friend Mephistopheles. He is a puppet that I have made for my in-person classes, and I read the character Mephistopheles from the tragedy that we are about to discuss today, The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus, which is a Renaissance play by one of the better-known playwrights of the Renaissance, Christopher Marlowe. So we are going to go over some background information today about the play, about the time period it was written, and all that stuff. And then I am going to read the play to you. I'm going to try to do different voices and stuff and, give you a little bit of flair to the best of my ability. But there are about 30 parts in this play, so it can be a little bit of a confusion. And hopefully, once we go through and discuss it, this seemingly archaic text will be a lot more clear and a lot more accessible. You do have to write on one of the two plays we are going to study. So it's either this one or it is A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. This is going to challenge you a little bit more, I think, than you're used to. But ultimately, I think you will be able to answer the questions on the essay prompt, and it won't be such a big deal. So without further ado, let's get going. I will share with you my slideshow first. All right. So Dr. Faustus, okay, of course the formatting is going to be wonky. Dr. Faustus, Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. So this is a very interesting image, the devil and Dr. Faustus. This obviously is the devil or some sort of demonic figure. And here is Dr. Faustus standing in the summoning circle. So it's a very interesting image that sort of captures the essence of the play, I think, in a very simple way. Okay. So who was Christopher Marlowe? Well, Christopher Marlowe, though you probably have never heard of him, he was actually very well known in the Renaissance, particularly in the theater area. He's a contemporary and influence of William Shakespeare. Everyone knows Shakespeare. Not everyone knows Marlowe. I don't think that's really fair. I think Marlowe was every bit as talented as Shakespeare, and a lot of other people think that as well. One interesting thing about him, this may not be interesting to you, but it is still a point that we need to make, is that he was probably an atheist. And so being an atheist at the time that he was alive was a big no-no. It was not something that you could get away with very easily. If you said the wrong things, as he often did, you could get accused of heresy and all sorts of nasty things. You could even have legal charges brought against you. And some of the penalties were quite severe, I believe, leading up to even death. So that being said, he was very careful, probably not as careful as some other people, because he eventually was charged with heresy. But his play contains a lot of subtle jabs at certain religious institutions and things like that that was not very popular. It was not very popular to criticize at the time. This is an interesting part. There's a big theory that he was a spy, like James Bond 007 type spy for, they believe, Queen Elizabeth. Anybody who was anybody was at the theater, right? So down from like the poorest blacksmith to like the richest nobleman to the queen, the royal family, anybody could go to the playhouse and see a play. And indeed, there were plays that were written for the masses and for the elite and for a little bit of both. And so if you were in the playhouse, you were kind of in the action, right? And so it's a good place to gather information. It's a good place to get the what's what and the who's who and all the secrets of what's going on. So it's speculated he was a spy. Why do they think he was a spy? Well, there are a couple of reasons. The first reason is that he came from a very poor beginning. Well, I would say very poor. His father was a cobbler, and that is not a person that makes desserts. A cobbler is a shoemaker. So he was a merchant, which means that he probably wasn't poor, but he also probably wasn't well-to-do. Nevertheless, while he was at university, I believe it was Cambridge, he ran up huge bills. Large amounts of meat and wine and all sorts of things were put on his tab. And the question comes, where was he getting the money for this? Certainly not from his cobbler father, right? So how is it that he was able to gain such lavishness during his stint at university? Very good question. Also, he would disappear and is unaccounted for huge periods of time while he was away at university. Where did he go? It wasn't like, if you were to just walk out of this class right now and stop doing the work, you would have a very hard time coming back 6 months later and being like, oh, by the way, can I pick up where I left off? Nevertheless, it appears that Marlowe was allowed to do this. So it is very speculated that he had some sort of secretive position, like a spy or an informant of some kind. And that's a very interesting sort of larger than life aspect to his character, which I really enjoy. He also has a very strange death, dies abruptly in a tavern brawl. There's a lot of speculation that it was just a bar fight. It was over the bar tab. They had a disagreement. He was stabbed in the eyeball and killed that way. It was a very suspicious death, though, and there's a lot of speculation even today that he was assassinated by someone who knew he was an informant or had some sort of quarrel with him or was out to get him in some way. So one of the reasons I like Marlowe is that he is kind of a larger than life character. Like his story, is kind of as good as some of the stuff he produces, right? It's very interesting. So a little bit of bio information there. Now we have to talk about magic, because when I say magic, there's all kinds of loaded connotations with magic. A lot of people think magic is like illusionary and, pull a rabbit out of a hat kind of stuff. Some people, when you say magic, they think of Harry Potter and, Wingardium Leviosa and Expectro Patronum and all that stuff. And when I say magic, what I really mean is an interest in esoteric or occult practices in the Renaissance, most of which were based on the Jewish Kabbalah, but some of them also had some roots in witchcraft as we understand it. Most of the people who are accused of witchcraft in the past are actually not witches. A lot of women were unfairly accused of being witches. And it's also important to note that there is a difference between magic and witchcraft, especially ceremonial magic, or what we might call high magic, and witchcraft. Witchcraft is more of like a folk magic, sort of pagan tradition kind of thing, whereas ceremonial Kabbalistic magic or whatever is based on mostly Judeo-Christian systems. So you're going to read in the play that when Faustus summons the spirits and stuff, he does so from a circle that is anagrammatized, is what it says, with the names of God and the saints, and it's very much steeped in Judeo-Christian mythology. And indeed, many Christians practiced magic. That seems like a contradiction to a lot of my students today, because today magic is considered the antithesis of Christianity. But actually, during the Renaissance, there were plenty of people who still considered themselves Christians and of a Christian worldview that practiced magic, which is basically using the Kabbalah and using the different symbols and things to generate a certain effect or affect the world at large. It was very secretive. It was very underground. The Kabbalistic magic, I say Kabbalah, when I say Kabbalah, that refers to Jewish mysticism, a system of Jewish mysticism. This is an image from the Kabbalah here to the right, featuring the tree of life, or the 10 Sephiroth. Each of these circles represents one of the personalities of God or Godhead, and moving between the paths of the circles is supposed to be a way to attain some kind of enlightenment. It's a very, very complicated system, and I'm certainly not going to get you guys to understand it in a few minutes here in this video. But you should just know that this was something that was going on in the Renaissance. It made a lot of people very nervous, but there were also a lot of people that embraced it and practiced it. And so it's one of these things that's constantly floating around as like, is this wrong or is this okay? Does this coincide with the will of God or does it go against it? Many, many people believe that it went against the will of God, that you should not do these things, that this sort of hidden knowledge was exclusively forbidden to human beings, and so you shouldn't do it. And as I said, a lot of folks, particularly women, were accused of witchcraft, and they suffered, particularly in the Middle Ages and such, and actually on even later into the Puritan era and things like that. They suffered torture, death, persecution. They were put on trial, all kinds of nasty things throughout European history. So there's the scientific revolution, and that takes place a period from 1543 to 1687, in which the foundations of modern science were established. And we've talked about this somewhat prior, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. When the scientific revolution happened, the way of looking at the world changed. It went from sort of superstition and mysticism and religiosity to science and reason and measurement and calculation and logic. And instead of us being shut down and sort of, oh, please, don't punish me, God, instead we look to the universe to start to figure out the secrets of the cosmos. What are we doing here? What does it mean? How does this work, right? What are the mechanics of the natural processes into which we are immersed? And this radically reshaped the popular view of the cosmos, and a lot of people felt it was a threat to church power, that it flew in the face of God, and that early scientists were playing God and they were transgressing, that their power came from the devil. You consider the myth of Eden, of the Garden of Eden. I always say it's not the tree of nastiness, it's not the tree of tomfoolery, it's the tree of knowledge, particularly the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that causes the original sin and causes the fall from grace. So this wariness towards knowledge is a fundamental aspect of what you might describe as the Judeo-Christian worldview. Now, there are a lot of people that would disagree with that, and there are some valid disagreements to that. Obviously, many of the scientists in the scientific revolution still considered themselves Christian. There is nothing about being Christian that doesn't mean you can embrace those things. But there was a conflict there, is basically my point. And that people were concerned that perhaps we were stepping over the line. And this is a question that I always bring up. Where is the line? Where is the line between how much knowledge is acceptable versus how much is too much? And I love to have this conversation in person because students always weigh in, and I figure out what disturbs you. Some people think, oh, human cloning, or we shouldn't go to other planets, or extra-dimensional travel, or whatever. There's always a different line for people, but you think about the way the line has moved in the past. At this point in time, the line is simply going beyond what is established to be true by the church, by the religious authorities, and seeking answers from the universe instead of from the religious authorities. That is enough to rustle some jimmies, as it were. And so the scientific revolution was viewed by many in an unfavorable way, which is kind of crazy because today, of course, science and the scientific revolution and the scientific method and all that stuff is held in very high regard. If you're taking other classes, science classes and things like that, you'll of course know how important it is. So I think it's very important to note that Christopher Marlowe's play about a character that delves too deeply into forbidden knowledge comes in the wake of the scientific revolution and is very largely to do with it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Alchemy. What is alchemy? Well, so alchemy, the root word, comes from Kemet, which is the word for ancient Egypt. So alchemy, as we understand it, is Egyptian in origin, or has its roots in certain Egyptian ideals. But an alchemist from the Renaissance is basically like a mixture of a chemist and a magician and a philosopher, and it leads to this weird hybrid sort of character that is simultaneously trying to use reason and chemicals and things to understand reality, but also someone who believes in magic and in divinity and the influence of the spiritual world onto the natural world. Many scientists today consider the alchemical enterprise to be a waste of time, a sort of foray into the superstition branch of these elements as opposed to anything valid. But if you look at many of the alchemists who lived during the Renaissance, they were all very important. Not all of them, but many of them were very important and influential people. A couple of people that come to mind are Paracelsus von Hohenheim of Switzerland. He was an alchemist. In fact, he was the alchemist largely accredited with coming up with the notion of the tincture of immortality, also known as the Philosopher's Stone. And he also revolutionized medicine as we understand it. Prior to Paracelsus, the Galen system of medicine, which is mentioned in the play, was the dominant notion of how a doctor should perform. Now, Galen, who I believe was Roman and came a lot earlier, he came up with a system about the body being a balance between 5 humors. So a humor is like a liquid or a juice or something like that. And if the body was sick, it was because the humors were imbalanced. So you would get phenomena like bloodletting, which is like the draining of blood into a bowl from a sick person. And it was believed to heal the people because if you were sick, it was because your humors were imbalanced. So if you drained some of the blood, it would balance out the other humors and then you would be okay. In actuality, draining the blood from sick people is a very dumb thing to do. And a lot of people died as a consequence of people not knowing any better. But Paracelsus, an alchemist, was one of the people who came around and said, stop draining the blood from sick people. Galen didn't know what he was talking about. And by the way, you should clean wounds. It was believed during this time that to allow the wound to fester was to allow the humors to balance out. If you were fester being like, pus and infection and that kind of thing. If you were to allow that to occur, it was because the humors were balancing out, they were leveling out. And so why get in the way of that process? Why wouldn't you just allow it to happen? Of course, we know from today that allowing wounds to go infected is a stupid thing to do. So alchemists were actually, even though they were highly distrusted, and many of them were charlatans, they were useful, but they were still considered servants of the devil by religious authorities. It was looked down upon by many, many people. There were also, like I said, charlatan alchemists. There's a famous gimmick that went on where a supposed alchemist would go from town to town professing to be able to turn lead into gold. And what they would do is they would have like a cauldron and like a little lead ingot, and they would drop the lead ingot into the cauldron, and then they would put some stuff in the cauldron. They would say some hocus pocus, and they would stick the tip of a wand into the cauldron. Now, inside of the wand would be like a gold dust, right? Like gold leaf or gold dust. And it would be capped with a piece of wax. When you would stick the wand into the boiling water, the wax would melt and it would release the gold. And the gold would be seen to be spilling into the pot, and lo and behold, I have transformed the lead into gold. They would then sell the recipe, the magic, for this particular spell to the person who they were performing it for, and then, of course, get out of Dodge before the person realized that they had been duped. There were a lot of people like this, but I don't really consider them true alchemists. I consider true alchemists to be people who were in the genuine spirit of discovering the universe and that had just not committed to the scientific revolution in the way that we understand it. Okay. Next thing. The legend of Faust. So whether or not there was a real Faust is disputed. There was a guy, Mr. Johann George Faust, a Renaissance mathematician, scholar, alchemist, and magician, who was the likely inspiration for the story. He lived between 1480 and 1541. And the story goes that Faust blew himself up in his laboratory. Like he was performing some kind of experiment with volatile compounds. Something went wrong, the stuff exploded, and he died. At this time, you got to figure, because of the paranoia regarding witchcraft, that if they found someone who blew themselves up in the laboratory, the reasoning for this would have been, to put it plainly, the devil, right? When they found this man's body, they would have been, oh my God, the devil tore him asunder. See, you should not transcend the bounds of what is acceptable. You should just be a good God-fearing person and don't ask too many questions and that kind of thing. But nevertheless, this legend of Faust became a folk myth. It spread around Europe, and eventually it reached the ears of Christopher Marlowe, where he adapted it into the play that we are going to read, and that is the tragical history of Dr. Faustus. So this is written sometime between 1589 and 1592. It is considered one of Marlowe's greatest works, if not his greatest work. And it would be like the equivalent of a modern horror film. This caused a lot of fear and hysteria. People that went to see it reported demons on the set and all kinds of spooky things happening. There's a lot of superstition related to theater anyway. So in this way, Faustus, in a way, mirrors Marlowe himself through his rebellious views and his heretical opinions. And I'm always left to ask, is Marlowe damning himself in this play? Is he showcasing his doubt and his fear and his criticism of the society in which he lives in order to not only display it, but also kind of damn himself and like give in to this sort of self-loathing that the character Faust seems to have? It's a very interesting question, but nevertheless, it is an interesting tragedy. I hope you will enjoy it, although it will be very difficult for you to read on your own because the language is so dated. There is also a lot of Latin. The reason there is Latin in this play is because Latin was the language of scholarship. And so if you were a scholar, if you were a learned person, you spoke Latin. Very simple. If you were from France, you spoke Latin. If you were from England, you spoke Latin. If you were from Italy, you spoke Latin. All these people used Latin as a way to like homogenize the academic process. And so students are often taken aback by the Latin. I would have more sympathy for this if we did not live in the age of Google Translate. If you really want to know what the play is saying, you can find out. But in any case, we will see some Latin, and I'll probably skip over a lot of it or just define it. I do want to talk about the character Mephistopheles, who's the puppet that I showed you at the start. Most of the conversation within the play takes place between Faust and Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles acts as an agent of the devil and convinces Faust to sell his soul by signing a contract in blood. This has become to be known as the Faustian bargain, and is used to describe someone who makes a deal with a nefarious partner. Sometimes it's used in a non-literal sense. Sometimes it's just referring to the literary trope of a character selling their soul. But this is kind of the origin of that idea, the idea that you can enter into some kind of binding contract with evil or with the devil, and that contract will come due and cost you very dearly. Mephistopheles in the play is all powerful. He can make extraordinary things happen with very minimal effort. And it's very interesting because at times Mephistopheles seems to encourage Faustus to redeem himself or encourage him to turn away from what he's doing. And then other times, of course, he threatens him if he repents. But it's interesting because it kind of makes you a little bit sympathetic maybe to Mephistopheles, or humanizes him in a way that I think we're probably not used to. But nevertheless, we know it's a tragedy. So spoiler alert, Faustus doesn't listen, and it does not end well. The final slide I will show you, and please don't judge me. This is me as a lot younger. I think this is almost a decade ago or a little less. But here I am, young me, standing in the Conjuring Circle, which is at the Shakespeare's Tavern in Atlanta. And this is actually, I believe this is a permanent part of the set, but they turn it upside down when they're not doing the play. It's built into the floor, like wood panels built into the floor, and it has the names of God transcribed and all that stuff. And Faustus would stand in the middle of the circle, and this is where he would perform his magic. And so naturally, I had to get a picture in my sort of rough and tumble days there. So hopefully you enjoy that, and you don't hold it too terribly much against me. So that's just kind of the preliminary stuff about Dr. Faustus. Now let's go ahead and jump right into the play. I'll try to get through the first third of it or so. It's not a particularly long play, which is good because some plays are very long, like Hamlet, which is hours, like 4 or 5 hours depending. So this is obviously a free version, so we work with what we have to. The dramatis personae, there are like 30 people listed here, so I won't go through all of those. But you see we got Lucifer, Beelzebub, the good angel, evil angel, 7 deadly sins. Got a bunch of human characters, Faustus, his companions, other scholars, things like that. Okay. So we start, remember the stage directions tell you what's going on. So enter chorus. Now remember, the chorus isn't really singing what's going on. It's more like setting the stage for what happens. The chorus would come out and say, it's like if you've ever seen Romeo and Juliet, the guy walks out on stage and he goes, two houses, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, right? And he's like telling you what's going on. This is kind of the gist of where we are. So I'll just go ahead and read it. Now, I will stop periodically to explain certain things, excuse me, and kind of what is being said. Not marching in the fields of Thrasimene, where Mars did mate the warlike Carthagins, nor sporting in the dalliance of love in courts of kings where state is overturned, nor in the pomp of proud audacious deeds intends our muse to vaunt her heavenly verse. Only this, gentles, we must now perform, the form of Faustus's fortunes, good or bad. So it tells you right up front, we're not talking about a war. This isn't a love story. This isn't a story about kings and proud, audacious deeds. We're going to tell you the story of this guy, this one fella here, Faustus, whatever happens to him, good or bad. And now to patient judgments we appeal and speak for Faustus in his infancy. So now we're going to tell you where this guy came from. Now he is born of parents base of stock in Germany within a town called Rhodes. At riper years to Wittenberg he went, whereas his kinsmen chiefly brought him up. So parents base of stock means like he was born to, common folk. He's not of rich blood. And then he goes to Wittenberg, Wittenberg, I believe would be the proper pronunciation. A lot of people don't know that W is pronounced as V in German. But he went to Wittenberg to go to school. So he was raised by a poor family, and then he went to school to be brought up by his kinsmen, to be educated. So much he profits in divinity, that shortly he was graced with doctor's name, excelling all, and sweetly can dispute in the heavenly matters of theology, till swollen with a cunning, and of a self-conceit, his waxen wings did mount above his reach, and melting heavens conspired his overthrow. So he was a very smart man. He profited in divinity. He became a doctor very easily, very accomplished. He could dispute heavenly matters of theology, but he was swollen with cunning and self-conceit. And then there is a literary reference, a mythological reference. His waxen wings did mount above his reach, and melting heavens conspired his overthrow. If you know, that is the story of Icarus. Icarus, the son of Daedalus. They were building the labyrinth, and they were trapped in a tower and being forced to work against their will. And so they made wings out of wax and feathers from the bed, and their plan was to fly out of the tower and escape. But Daedalus told Icarus, don't fly too close to the sun, because if you do, your wings will melt and you will fall and die. Of course, Icarus does not listen, and he flies too close to the sun, his wings melt, and he falls from the sky to his death. This is a story about crossing boundaries, which is very relevant to Faustus. And that comparison is a very fitting one, I think. For, falling to a devilish exercise, and glutted now with learning's golden gifts, he surfeits upon cursed necromancy. Nothing so sweet as magic is to him, which he prefers before his chiefest bliss. And this the man that in his study sits. So he has given up on all of that other stuff, and he's gotten into magic. Necromancy is like raising the dead, but in this case it means like black magic. All right, Faustus discovered in his study. Settle thy studies, Faustus, and begin to sound the depth of that thou wilt profess, having commenced to be a divine in show, yet level at the end of every art, and live and die in Aristotle's works. Sweet analytics, 'tis thou hast ravished me. Bene dicere et finis logicis. Is it to dispute well, logic's chiefest end? Affords this art no greater miracle? Then read no more, thou hast attained that end. So what he's doing is he's going through the different schools of thought that exist in his time, and he's talking about what he likes about them and what he doesn't like, and eventually he's going to settle on magic, right? He's going to talk about, well, there's analytics, and there's being a physician, and there's being a biblical scholar, but what I really want, right? Okay. A greater subject fittest Faustus' wit. Bid economy farewell, and Galen come. Be a physician, Faustus, heap up gold, and be eternized for some wondrous cure. The end of our physic is our body's health. Why, Faustus, hast thou not attained that end? Are not thy bills hung up as monuments, whereby whole cities have escaped the plague, and 1,000 desperate maladies been cured? Yet art thou still but Faustus, and a man. Could make men to live eternally, or being dead, raise them to life again? Then this profession were to be esteemed. So he's like, I don't even want to be a doctor because a doctor just cures people who are sick. I want to make them live forever. So we see now that his pride is getting the better of him already within the first 2 pages of the play. Physic, farewell. Where is Justinian? And then he reads in Latin. He says, a petty case of paltry legacies. Some more Latin. Such is the subject of the Institute and universal body of the law. This study fits a mercenary drudge who aims at nothing but external trash, too servile and illiberal for me. When all is done, divinity is best. Jerome's Bible, Faustus, view it well. He's like, never mind all this philosophy and all this stuff. I want to study God. God, divinity, that's what's best. And then he reads, stipendium peccati mortis est. The reward of sin is death. That's hard. If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and there is no truth in us. Why then be like we must sin, and so consequently die? Aye, we must die an everlasting death. What doctrine call you this? Che sera, sera. What will be, will be. Divinity, adieu. He's like, goodbye, God. I don't even want this. The metaphysics of magicians and necromantic books are heavenly. Lines, circles, scenes, letters, and characters. Aye, these are those that Faustus most desires. Oh, what a world of profit and delight, of power and of honor and omnipotence is promised to the studious artisan. All things that move between the quiet poles shall be at my command. Emperors and kings are but obeyed in their several provinces, but his dominion that exceeds in this stretcheth as far as doth the mind of man. A sound magician is a demigod. Here tire my brains to gain a deity. So he says, you know what? What I really want is absolute power. The only thing that's going to give me absolute power is magic, right? He says, kings are but obeyed in their provinces, but I will be obeyed by the universe itself. A sound magician is a demigod. Demigod, of course, being what Maui is in Moana, or what Hercules is, half human, half god, right? So here comes Wagner. Wagner's like his servant or his friend. Wagner, commend me to my dearest friends, the German Valdis and Cornelius. Request them earnestly to visit me. I will, sir. That's Wagner's voice. Their conference would be a greater help to me than all my labors. Plod I ne'er so fast. So here comes the good and the evil angel. Like, this reminds me of Tom and Jerry with the good angel and the little, you know what I'm talking about? They're sitting on his shoulder. They're trying to talk him into doing the right or the wrong thing. So the good angel says, "Oh, Faustus, lay that damned book aside, and gaze not on it, lest it tempt thy soul, and heap God's heavy wrath upon thy head. Read the scriptures. That is blasphemy." So it's trying to turn him back to God, right? No, go back. And the evil angel says, "Go forward, Faustus, in that famous art, wherein all nature's treasure is contained. Be thou on earth as Jove is in the sky, lord and commander of these elements." And then they leave. How am I glutted with conceit of this? Shall I make spirits fetch me what I please, resolve me of all ambiguities, perform what desperate enterprise I will? I'll have them fly to India for gold, ransack the ocean for orient pearl, and search all corners of the new-found world for pleasant fruits and princely delicates. I'll have them read me strange philosophy, and tell the secrets of all foreign kings. I'll have them wall all Germany with brass, and make swift Rhine circle fair Wittenberg. I'll have them fill the public schools with silk, wherewith the students shall be bravely clad. I'll levy soldiers with the coin they bring, and chase the Prince of Parma from our land, and reign sole king of all the provinces. Yea, stranger engines for the brunt of war than was the fiery keel at Antwerp bridge I'll make my servile spirits to invent. So here he's like fantasizing of the stuff that he's going to do with the power. Notice the things that he says he's going to do with the power. He's going to get gold and pearls, and he's going to get fruits and delicates, like tasty things, and he's going to wall all of Germany with brass. Now, he's not going to wall it with stone, although stone would be effective. No, he's going to wall it with brass, and brass is like expensive. It's a better metal alloy than would be normal at the time. It ain't cheap, let's just put it that way. And then he says he's going to fill the public schools with silk. Silk is a fabric that's very fine. You may not know this. Silk comes from worms, the larval stage of the gypsy moth. and it's very difficult to make, and it's very delicate, and it takes. It was considered a very fine thing. It came from the East. It was, you didn't have silk unless you were rich, but he wants to give it to all the school students, everybody, right? Excuse me. So there is a little altruism in what he wants to do, but it's all couched in this finery and luxury and lavishness, right? So it doesn't really count. We can see that Faustus, he's got skewed motivations, even where it seems like he wants to do something good. Enter Valdes and Cornelius. They're like the ones that already practice magic at the school, but they're not as smart as Faustus, so they want to get him because they feel like if someone as smart as him starts to practice magic, then he'll be able to do things that they can't. Come, German Valdes and Cornelius, and make me blessed with your sage conference. Valdes, sweet Valdes and Cornelius, know that your words have won me at the last to practice magic and concealed arts. Philosophy is odious and obscure. Both law and physic are for petty wits. 'Tis magic, magic that has ravished me. Then, gentle friends, aid me in this attempt, and I, that have with subtle syllogisms gravelled the pastors of the German church, and made the flowering pride of Wittenberg swarm to my problems, as the infernal spirits on sweet Musaeus when he came to hell, will be as cunning as Agrippa was, whose shadow made all Europe honor him. So he's like, yeah, go ahead, teach me, and I will become the most powerful magician of all time. This is escalating quickly. What do you guys think? Is Faustus going to recover? I'll go ahead and tell you it's a tragedy. So Valdes says, Faustus, these books thy wit and our experience shall make all nations to canonize us. That means treat us like saints. As Indian Moors obey their Spanish lords, so shall the spirits of every element be always serviceable to us three. Like lions shall they guard us when we please, like Almain rudders with their horsemen staves, or Lapland giants trotting by our sides, sometimes like women or unwedded maids, shadowing more beauty in their airy brows than have the white breasts of the Queen of Love. From Venice shall they drag huge argosies, and from America the golden fleece, that yearly stuffs old Philip's treasury, if learned Faustus will be resolute. So again, he's like promising him power. All of this stuff will be yours if you would be but resolute in the art of magic. And then Faustus says, Valdes, as resolute as am I in this as thou to live. Therefore, object it not. Now here comes Cornelius. The miracles that magic will perform will make thee vow to study nothing else. He that is grounded in astrology, enriched with tongues, well seen in minerals, hath all the principles magic doth require. Then doubt not, Faustus, but to be renowned, and more frequented for this mystery than heretofore the Delphian oracle. Who is the Delphian oracle? Obviously, you're not going to answer. The Delphian oracle is a soothsayer from ancient Greece. She was like, there were several oracles, but there was one really famous one who was like really spooky with her predictions. She would make predictions, have visions. She would, people would consult her for her input. When should I go to war? When should I plant my crops? What should I do about problem X? And she would give them answers based on her ability to have visions. She could see the future and stuff like that. She was a priestess of Apollo. So they say you'll be more renowned. You will be more sought after than the Delphian oracle, which is a big deal because she was very important. The spirits tell me they can dry the sea and fetch the treasure of all foreign wrecks. Yea, all the wealth that our forefathers hid within the massy entrails of the earth. Then tell me, Faustus, what shall we three want? Nothing, Cornelius. Oh, this cheers my soul. Come, show me some demonstrations magical, that I may conjure in some bushy grove, and have these joys in full possession. Then haste thee to some solitary grove, and bear wise Bacon and Albertus's works, the Hebrew Psalter and the New Testament, and whatsoever else is requisite. We will inform thee ere our conference cease. Valdes, first let him know the words of art, and then all the other ceremonies learned. Faustus may try his cunning by himself. First I'll instruct thee in the rudiments, and then thou wilt be perfecter than I. So he's like, I will show you the basics, and then you're going to surpass me, because you're the smartest guy around. Then come and dine with me, and after meat, we'll canvass every quiddity thereof. For ere I sleep, I'll try what I can do. This night I'll conjure, though I die therefore. So he's like, I'm going to conjure tonight. I'm going to figure this out. He leaves. So then in come the two scholars. Now the scholars are concerned because Valdes and Cornelius are troublemakers. They practice black magic. Nobody likes them. So they come in, they're like, I wonder what's become of Faustus that was wont to make our schools ring with sic probo. That we shall presently know here. Here comes his boy. Enter Wagner. How now, sirrah, where's thy master? God in heaven knows. Why, dost thou not know then? Yes, I know, but that follows not. Go to, sirrah, leave your jesting, and tell us where he is. That follows not by force of argument, which you, being licentiate, should stand upon. Therefore acknowledge your error, and be attentive. Then you will not tell us? You are deceived, for I will tell you. Yet if you were not dunces, you would not ask me such a question. For is he not corpus natural, meaning does he not have a natural body, and he is not that mobile? Then wherefore should you ask me such a question? But I am by nature phlegmatic, slow to wrath, and prone to lechery, to love, I would say. It were not for you to come within 40 foot of the place of execution, although I do not doubt but see you both hanged in the next sessions. Thus, having triumphed over you, I will set my countenance like a precision, and begin to speak thus. Truly, my dear brethren, my master is within at dinner, with Valdez and Cornelius, as this wine, if it could speak, would inform your worships. And so, the Lord bless you, preserve you, and keep you, my dear brethren. So he's toying with them. He's like, you dummies, he's in there eating dinner. What do you think he's doing? And the first scholar says, "Oh, Faustus, then I fear that which I've long suspected, that thou art fallen to that damned art for which they too are infamous throughout the world." So by association with Valdez and Cornelius, they know he's up to no good. And they're very concerned because it is endangering his soul, his immortal soul. Were he a stranger, not allied to me, the danger of his soul would make me mourn. But come, let us go and inform the rector. It may be his grave counsel will reclaim him. I fear me nothing will reclaim him now, yet let us see what we can do. Enter Faustus. Now that the gloomy shadow of the night, longing to view Orion's drizzling look, leaps from the Antarctic world unto the sky, and dims the welkin with her pitchy breath, Faustus, begin thine incantations, and try if devils will obey thy hest. Seeing thou hast prayed and sacrificed to them, within this circle is Jehovah's name, forward and backward, anagrammatized, the abbreviated names of holy saints, figures of every adjunct to the heavens, and characters of signs and erring stars by which the spirits are enforced to rise. So he's talking about the circle that I showed you from the slideshow, how it has the names of God and all the symbols and stuff. Okay. He's in a grove, so he's in a forest. He's about to do magic in a forest, and he's like readying himself to do it. Then fear not, Faustus, be resolute, and try the utmost magic. All right, now this part is tough. This is Latin. Sint mihi de acrontis propiti. This is the spell that he's summoning the demons with. Valiat numen triplex Jehovae igne aeriae aquante spiritus salvate. Orientis princeps Beelzebub inferni ardentis monarcha et demigorgon propitamus vos un appariat et surgat Mephistopheles dragon quad tumeraris per Jehovan Gehennem in consecratum aquam quam nunc spargo. I'm probably butchering this. Cinc nume crucis quad nunc offacio et per vota nostra ispe nunc surgat nobis dictatus Mephistopheles. Okay. So I probably butchered that, but this is the spell whereby he is summoning Mephistopheles, who, as I mentioned, is one of the key figures in the play. So it says, enter Mephistopheles. And then this is our first joke. Okay, let's see if you get it. I charge thee to return and change thy shape. Thou art too ugly to attend on me. Go and return an old Franciscan friar. That holy shape becomes a devil best. So he tells him to go and come back dressed like a monk because that would be more fitting of a devil. That is Marlowe like attacking institutional religion. So Mephistopheles leaves. I see there is virtue in my heavenly words. Who would not be proficient in this art? How pliant is this Mephistopheles, full of obedience and humility. Such is the force of magic and my spell. So he's already congratulating himself like, good job, yes, you summoned the demon and he listened to you. So in comes Mephistopheles dressed like a Franciscan friar or like a monk. He's in a robe, all that stuff. Now, Faustus, what would thou have me do? I charge thee to wait on me whilst I live, to do whatever Faustus shall command, be it to make the moon drop from her sphere or the ocean to overwhelm the world. Mephistopheles says, I am a servant to great Lucifer, and may not follow thee without his leave. No more than he commands must we perform. Faustus says, did he not charge thee to appear to me? No, I came hither of mine own accord. Did not my conjuring speeches raise thee? Speak. That was the cause, but yet per accidents. For when we hear one rack the name of God, abjure the Scriptures and his Saviour Christ, we fly, in hopes to get his glorious soul. Nor will we come unless he use such means whereby he is in danger to be damned. Therefore the shortest cut for conjuring is to stoutly abjure all godliness, and pray devoutly to the prince of hell. So he's like, look, man, I'm not going to do your word just because you called me. You got to sign on the dotted line, right? Sounds like I'm losing my voice, so we may have to cut this a little bit short for today. But so Faustus hath already done, and holds this principle: there is no chief but only Beelzebub, to whom Faustus doth dictate himself. This word damnation terrifies not me, for I confound hell in Elysium. My ghost be with the old philosophers. But, leaving these vain trifles of men's souls, tell me, what is that Lucifer thy lord? So he says, I don't believe in hell. I think it'll be like Elysium, which is like the part of the underworld from Greek mythology that isn't so bad. The underworld in Greek mythology isn't like a place of eternal horrible torture, but it doesn't really, it kind of sucks a little bit. Like it's not a great place to be. But there's a part of it, the fields of Elysium, which is actually kind of nice. And so he's like, yeah, well, maybe it's not so bad. So he's like convincing himself that it won't be so bad. Mephistopheles says, Archregent and commander of all spirits. Was not that Lucifer an angel once? Yes, Faustus, and most dearly loved of God. How comes it then that he is prince of devils? Oh, by aspiring pride and insolence, for which God threw him from the face of heaven. And what are you that live with Lucifer? Unhappy spirits that fell with Lucifer, conspired against our God with Lucifer, and are forever damned with Lucifer. Where are you damned? In hell. How comes it then that thou art out of hell? Why, this is hell, nor am I out of it. Think'st thou that I, that saw the face of God and tasted the eternal joys of heaven, am not tormented with 10,000 hells of being deprived of everlasting bliss? Oh, Faustus, leave these frivolous demands which strike a terror to my fainting soul. And then Faustus says, what, is great Mephistopheles so passionate for being deprived of the joys of heaven? Learn thou of Faustus's manly fortitude, and scorn those joys thou never shalt possess. Go, bear these tidings to great Lucifer, seeing Faustus hath incurred eternal death, beat by desperate thoughts against Jove's deity. Say he surrenders up to him his soul, so he will spare him 24 years, letting him live in all voluptuousness, having me ever to attend on me, to give me whatsoever I shall ask, to tell me whatsoever I demand, to slay mine enemies and to aid my friends, and always be obedient to my will. Go, and return to mighty Lucifer, and meet me in my study at midnight, and then resolve me of thy master's mind. I will, Faustus. So he's like, I don't want to hear your whining. I'm not afraid of you, or I'm not afraid of hell. You go and you tell the devil, I'm ready to make a deal, and then you come back and tell me what he says. Had I as many souls as there be stars, I'd give them all for Mephistopheles. By him I'll be great emperor of the world, and make a bridge through the moving air to pass the ocean with a band of men. I'll join the hills that bind the Afric shore, and make that country continent to Spain, and both contributary to my crown. The emperor shall not live but by my leave, nor any potentate of Germany. Now that I have obtained what I desired, I'll live in speculation of this art, till Mephistopheles return again. So now we have a bit of exit. It's a new scene, a little bit of comedic relief, a discussion between Wagner and an actual clown. This is actually a really funny scene, but I find that I have to explain the jokes in order for it to be funny because, they're hundreds of years old. So Wagner says, come here, Sirrah boy. So Sirrah's like sir, it's like a title. And the clown says, boy, oh, disgrace to my person, zounds, boy in your face. You have seen many boys with beards, I'm sure. So he's like, what are you calling me boy for? I'm a grown man. Sirrah, hast thou no comings in? Yes, and goings out too, you may see, sir. Alas, poor slave, see how poverty jests in his nakedness. I know the villain's out of service, and so hungry that I know he would give his soul to the devil for a shoulder of mutton, though it were blood raw. So he's like, this guy, he jokes, but he's so poor and dirty that he would give his soul for a shoulder of mutton, which is like lamb meat. And the clown says, not so neither. I need to have it well roasted and good sauce to it if I can pay so dear, I can tell you. So that's a funny joke because he's like, if I'm going to give my soul for some mutton, it better be roasted and with good sauce. Okay. It's funny to me. Sirrah, wilt thou be my man and wait on me? And I will make thee go like my disciple. And the clown says, what, in verse? No, slave, in beaten silk and staves acre. Staves acre? That's good to kill vermin. Then, belike, if I serve you, I shall be lousy. Come on. It's taking forever to load now. I will probably have to end this a little early anyway because my voice is wavering. Oh, come on. There we go. Why, so thou shalt be, whether thou does it or no. For, Sirrah, if thou dost not presently bind thyself to me for 7 years, I'll turn all the lice about thee into familiars, and make them tear thee into pieces. So he's like, if you don't become my servant for 7 years, I'm going to take all the lice on your head and turn them into monsters, and they're going to eat you. And the clown, this is funny, he says, nay, sir, you may save yourself a labor, for they are as familiar with me as if they paid for their meat and drink, I can tell you. So he's like, my lice are my friends. They won't tear me up. It's kind of funny. Well, Sirrah, leave your jesting. Jesting is joking. And take these guilders. Guilders is money. Yes, merry sir, and I thank you, too. So now thou art to be at an hour's warning, whensoever and wheresoever the devil shall fetch thee. And then this freaks the clown out. He's like, ooh, here, take your guilders again. I'll none of them. Not I. Thou art pressed. Prepare thyself, or I will presently raise up 2 devils to carry thee away. Banyo, Belcher, those are the names of the devils. And then the clown says, Belcher, and Belcher, come here, I'll belch him. He's like swinging his fists around. I'm not afraid of a devil. Enter the 2 devils. How now, sir, will you serve me now? He's like, got the devils behind him. Aye, good Wagner, take away the devils then. Spirits away. Now, Sirrah, follow me. I will, sir. But hark you, master, will you teach me this conjuring occupation? Like, will you show me how to summon these devils? Aye, Sirrah, I'll teach thee to turn thyself to a dog, or a cat, or a mouse, or a rat, or anything. A dog, or a cat, or a mouse, or a rat? Oh, brave Wagner! Villain, call me Master Wagner, and see that you walk attentively, and let your right eye be always diametrically fixed upon my left heel, that thou may do, I can't remember what the quasi vestigius nostris insistri, that you may do my bidding or something. Well, sir, I warrant you. And then they exit. So there's a little bit of comic relief. That scene doesn't actually really carry the play really at all. It's just kind of there to make you laugh. The joke about the mutton and the lice, it's pretty funny. Okay. Faustus discovered in his study. Now, Faustus, must thou needs be damned? Canst thou not be saved? What boots it then to think on God or heaven? Away with such vain fancies, and despair. Despair in God, and trust in Beelzebub. Now, go not backward, Faustus, be resolute. Why waverest thou? Oh, something soundeth in my ear. Abjure this magic. Turn to God again. Why? He loves thee not. The God thou serves is thine own appetite, wherein is fixed the love of Beelzebub. To him I'll build an altar and a church, and offer lukewarm blood of newborn babes. So he's like really willing to go the distance. But we see here that Faustus is faltering. He's going back and forth, like, should I save myself? Should I keep going? What do I do? He's on the fence. Enter the good angel and the evil angel. Go forward, Faustus, in that famous art. Sorry, I screwed it up. Go forward, Faustus, in that famous art. Sweet Faustus, leave that execrable art. Contrition, prayer, repentance, what of these? Oh, they are the means to bring thee unto heaven. Rather illusions, fruits of lunacy that make men foolish that do use them most. Sweet Faustus, think of heaven and heavenly things. No, Faustus, think of honor and of wealth. And they leave. Wealth! Why, the Signory of Emden shall be mine when Mephistopheles shall stand by me. What power can hurt me? Faustus, thou art safe. Cast no more doubts. Mephistopheles, come and bring great tidings from Bring glad tidings from great Lucifer. Is it not midnight? Come, Mephistopheles, and bring great tidings from great Lucifer. Is it not midnight? Come, Mephistopheles. Veni, veni, Mephistopheli. All right, he enters. Now tell me, what saith Lucifer thy lord? That I shall wait on Faustus while he lives, so he will buy my service with his soul. Already Faustus hath hazarded that for thee. But now thou must bequeath it solemnly, and write a deed of gift with thine own blood, for that security craves Lucifer. If thou deny it, I must back to hell. Stay, Mephistopheles, and tell me, what good will my soul do thy lord? Enlarge his kingdom. Is that the reason why he tempts us thus? And this is Latin for misery loves company. Why have you any pain that torture others? As great as have the human souls of men. But tell me, Faustus, shall I have thy soul, and I will be thy slave, and wait on thee, and give thee more than thou hast wit to ask? Ay, Mephistopheles, I'll give it thee. Then, Faustus, stab thine arm courageously, and bind thy soul, that at a certain day great Lucifer may claim it as his own, and then thou be as great as Lucifer. So he's telling him to stab his arm so that he can sign the contract in blood, this is where the deal with the devil motif comes from. This scene right here, pretty much. I mean, the myth of Faust, but this is where we see it. Lo, Mephistopheles, for love of thee, Faustus hath cut his arm, and with proper blood assures his soul to be great Lucifer's, chief lord and regent of perpetual night. View here this blood that trickles from mine arm, and let it be propitious for my wish. But, Faustus, write it in a manner of a deed of gift. So he's like, write it down. I want a contract. Aye, so I do, but Mephistopheles, my blood congeals, and I can write no more. I'll fetch thee fire to dissolve it straight. And then he leaves. Now we're going to have another moment of doubt, right? Another back and forth. Should I do it? Should I go forward? What might the staying of my blood portend? It is unwilling I should write this bill. Why streams it not, that I may write afresh? Faustus gives to thee his soul. Oh, there it stayed. Why shouldst thou not? Is not thy soul thine own? Then write again. Faustus gives to thee his soul. Re-enter Mephistopheles with the chafer of fire. Okay. See, Faustus, here is fire. Set it on. So now the blood begins to clear again. Now I will make an end immediately. And then this is breaking the fourth wall. Like, this is where the characters talk to the audience. Mephistopheles turns to the audience and goes, what will I not do to obtain his soul? Did you hear my voice crack right there? I am losing it. We're going to have to stop soon, unfortunately. Consummatum est. This bill is ended, and Faustus hath bequeathed his soul to Lucifer. But what is this inscription on mine arm? Homo fuge. Whither shall I fly? If unto God he'll throw me down into hell. My senses are deceived. Here's nothing writ. Oh, yes, I see it plain. Even here is writ, Homo fuge. Yet shall not Faustus fly. I'll fetch him somewhat to delight his mind. So Faustus is like having remorse that he signed the contract, and Mephistopheles is like, I got this. I'm going to get this guy back on my page. So he goes and brings the devils in. Enter the devils, giving crowns and rich apparel to Faustus. They dance and then depart. Re-enter Mephistopheles. What means this show? Speak, Mephistopheles. Nothing, Faustus, but to delight thy mind, and let thy see what magic can perform. But may I raise such spirits when I please? Aye, Faustus, and do greater things than these. Then, Mephistopheles, receive this scroll, a deed of gift of body and of soul, but yet conditionally that thou perform all covenants and articles between us both. Faustus, I swear, by hell and Lucifer, to effect all promises between us both. Then hear me read it, Mephistopheles. On these conditions following. First, that Faustus may be a spirit in form and substance. Secondly, that Mephistopheles shall be his servant and be by him commanded. Thirdly, that Mephistopheles shall do for him and bring him whatever he desires. Fourthly, that he shall be in his chamber or house invisible. Lastly, that he shall appear to the said John Faustus at all times, in what shape and form soever he please. I, John Faustus of Wittenberg, doctor by these presents, do give both body and soul to Lucifer, prince of the East, and his minister Mephistopheles, and furthermore grant unto them that 24 years being expired, and these articles above being inviolate, full power to fetch or carry the said John Faustus, body and soul, flesh and blood, into their habitation wheresoever, by me John Faustus.
Speak, Faustus, do you deliver this as your deed?
I take it, and the devil give thee good of it.
So now, Faustus, ask me what thou wilt.
First I will question with thee about hell. Tell me, where is this place that men call hell?
Under the heavens.
Aye, so are all things, but whereabouts?
Within the bowels of these elements, where we are tortured and remain forever. Hell hath no limits, nor is it circumscribed in one self-place. But where we are is hell, and where hell is, there must we ever be. And to be short, when all the world dissolves, and every creature shall be purified, all places shall be hell that are not heaven.
So he asks him to say, where is hell? Mephistopheles basically says hell is a mental state. Hell follows us around. Wherever we are, that's where hell is. And then Faustus says, I think hell's a fable.
I think so still, till experience change thy mind.
So he's like warning him, like, yeah, you think it's a joke. You just wait, buddy. Why? Dost thou think that Faustus shall be damned?
Aye, of necessity, for he is the scroll, in which thou hast given thy soul to Lucifer.
Aye, and body too. And what of that? Thinkest thou that Faustus is so found to imagine that after this life there is any pain? No, these are trifles and mere old wives' tales.
But I am an instance to prove the contrary, for I tell thee I am damned, and now in hell.
Nay, and this be hell, I'll willingly be damned. What, sleeping and eating and walking and disputing? But leaving this, let me have a wife, the fairest maid in Germany, for I am wanton and lascivious, and cannot live without a wife.
Well, Faustus, thou shalt have a wife.
So he brings in this like horrible looking demon woman, which is not what Faustus asked, but there's actually a reason why he does this.
What sight is this? Now, Faustus, wilt thou have a wife?
Here's a hot whore indeed. No, I'll no wife. So he brings him this monster because marriage is a sacrament. Marriage is holy. So Mephistopheles can't really touch marriage. He doesn't want Faustus to be interested in marriage because it's a holy thing. So he really wants him to like reject the idea and to just, seek relationships without marriage, basically, sexual relationships.
Marriage is but a ceremonial toy, and if thou lovest me, think no more of it. I'll cull thee out the fairest courtesans, and bring them every morning to thy bed. She whom thine eyes shall like, thy heart shall have. Were she as chaste as was Penelope, as wise as Saba, or as beautiful as was bright Lucifer before his fall. Here, take this book, peruse it well. The iterating of these lines brings gold. The framing of this circle on the ground brings thunder, whirlwinds, storms, and lightning. Pronounce this thrice devoutly to thyself, and men in harness shall appear to thee, ready to execute what thou commandest.
Thanks, Mephistopheles, for this sweet book. This will I keep as chary as my life. Okay, my voice, I would like to continue because I have about 50 pages to go, but we'll have to do that in the next video because my voice is not gonna go much longer. So hopefully you're getting it on some level and you're enjoying it. I hope my theatrics are appealing to you. And we will finish up the tragedy of Dr. Faustus, and then we will do a comedy following that. So you'll have one comedy and one tragedy to base your knowledge of drama on. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.